we are going into this world where identity, I think, is going to be extremely important. Are you able to know that who I think I'm talking to is actually who I'm talking to? You're on a video call. You think you're speaking to someone that you're not. One of the biggest things that I'm trying to think through as we trudge forward into this new age. Hey, all right, welcome back to another episode. Hey, today we're going to just kind of talk through what happened in the last week. I haven't been able to record in about a week, a little over a week now. I was in the Philippines last week, which was interesting. I was there celebrating one of my very first employee. Her name's Camille. She's been with me for a little over 3 years now. She got married this past weekend. And so my wife and I were there to celebrate her and go to that wedding, her and Joyson. It's a beautiful ceremony. It was small. It was like kind of in a village about 3 hours north of Manila. So, yeah, my wife and I have been chewing on it and like thinking through all the different things we experienced on that trip. Yeah, there will be a lot to unpack, and we can do that at some point. Maybe a few thoughts that come to mind immediately are that, yeah, there's definitely a wealth divide there. You hear on the news, oh, there's such a wealth divide in the United States, and there's the really ultra rich, and then there's kind of people who are just trying to get by, and then there's a lot of people in the middle. Man, there it's kind of one or the other. There's really the ultra wealthy and the ultra powerful. And there's a long history. One of the coolest things about AI is that you can go in and prompt Claude to say, tell me about the history of this place. And I want to kind of know. And okay, so it used to be the Spanish settled there, and then actually the Americans held it for a little while, and then it was transferred over, and then there was a dictatorship, and there was a people's revolution uprising to kind of take their country back. It's a very Christian Catholic culture. Yeah, just a lot to unpack there. Maybe the highlight would just be thankful for what you have and where you were born and the passport that you hold, because it's not like how it is here everywhere. One of the most striking things that we saw was when we were driving from the city up. You get into certain parts of the city and you're on the highway basically where you can see it. There's these slums. And, one of the things I was sitting there, talking to Claude as we're driving, and I was like, tell me more about the slums. And it's essentially people trying to come in from the provinces, which is like the farmland basically, and try to make a life in the city. And there's just an income mismatch where you can't support your family on certain jobs, making 10 USD a day, where you need much more than that, obviously, to rent an apartment and all those kinds of things. So I just came back from it thinking, very thankful for the opportunities that we have here. Very thankful for Camille. I'm also very thankful for the life that we're able to help support through Camille, with the work that she does for our firm and with the income in USD that we're able to pay her. That, again, there's a mismatch, obviously, where if I had to pay someone here in the United States for what she does for our firm, the economics would look different. But with the money that I pay her, it goes so much further and can really help a lot of different pieces of her, family tree and all kinds of things. So yeah, lots to unpack there. I don't know if we'll get to all of it today. I wanted to chat about something a little bit different, but I just want to kind of let you know where I was for the last week. So we got in yesterday. Time change is weird. They're about 13 hours ahead of us right now because of daylight savings time. So it's like yesterday we left at Monday morning at like 11 a.m. We got back Monday afternoon at 4 p.m. because of the time change, but we traveled for probably close to 20 hours or something. So very interesting. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, a little bit more. And then I come back and every Monday night I get to have our Bitment call on Monday evenings. And man, we just got to unpack a lot of really interesting stuff. So I wanted to kind of talk through some of that and one specific piece. So we've been going down this AI rabbit hole, like I think a lot of people are, some articles that came out this past week really highlighted how few people globally are using any AI, and especially using any kind of paid version of an AI tool. And so that was helpful because you kind of, if you're in this bubble on Twitter or even parts of LinkedIn or even some of these group messages I'm in, you're thinking, oh man, am I falling behind? And rest assured, no, you're not falling behind. If you are even thinking about these things, you're so far ahead. And then if you are to the point where you're like, hey, I'm going to try to implement some of this stuff into my small business, then you're far ahead. But you also see some of the things in the market, happened last week, and the market is reacting to what Claude is putting out, what some of these open source models are putting out. And so everyone's trying to figure out what's going on, right? The Citrine, I think it's Citrine Research put out their article over the weekend that had some effects in the market yesterday for any of the companies that were named explicitly in that article. And so I think everyone is trying to figure out, how should I think about this AI trend? Is it bearish? Is it bullish for my business? Am I going to have a job? Am I going to be able to maintain my income? Am I going to be able to keep paying my mortgage? What does that look like for people's, the meaning that they find through their work? And so I just wanted to come here and, we talked a lot. We were on the call last night for about an hour and a half, and a lot of really good stuff to take away. But one of the rabbit holes I get off that call, and a rabbit hole that I went down, is how do you verify the identity of an agent, and how do you also have an audit trail for the activity of a specific agent? And I don't know if you've ever heard of Nostr. If you're in the Bitcoin space, you most likely have. It is so Bitcoin obviously is just a protocol, and then there's a lot of things that can be built on top of that open source protocol. Nostr is the communications layer of that puzzle. So it's different than Bitcoin, of course, because it's not a monetary network, it's a communications network. But I went down this rabbit hole of, hey, could I actually have AI agents that they have a public private key set, and the agent through the Nostr protocol can actually sign messages using their private key to prove that they actually are the agent that I think they are. You could have humans on the team also obviously have their own public private key set through a Nostr protocol, have them sign messages. It's just interesting because we're going into this world where identity, I think, is going to be extremely important. Are you able to know that who I think I'm talking to is actually who I'm talking to? And also, can I trace that back to make sure that, hey, this person or this agent handled this task for this piece of the puzzle, then the workflow transferred to this agent or this human, then they signed it. And there's communications between the agents, between the humans and the agents. And then, of course, with external third parties, like a client, like a vendor. And how do you make sure that everyone is actually who they say they are? Like, for example, I actually just, it's 8:30 almost a.m. I had to call the IRS this morning because we have a client. They got a letter from a office that's claiming to be the IRS. And, I'd love to be a trusting person and be like, oh yeah, of course, this is an IRS office and they're asking, for multiple six figures in liabilities. The client is like, yeah, there was an issue. And so this sounds right. But of course, it also could be a bad actor that for some reason got their hands on the information that the client owed this money and then says, hey, send us this money. And you think you're paying the IRS, but you actually might be paying a fraudulent scammer. And so this morning I called just a regular IRS practitioner line to say, we're just wanting to verify and do our due diligence before we send over any funds. And I think that having to go the extra several miles in the future to verify that before you send money to a vendor who changed their wire instructions, you pick up the phone and you say, hey, is this true? But then the person you called, are you sure that person, the phone number is not hacked, that there's not some kind of AI generated voice where you think you're speaking to one person, but you're not. You're on a video call. You think you're speaking to someone that you're not. And so identity is actually one of the biggest things that I'm trying to think through as we trudge forward into this new age. So that was the main idea that I went down yesterday, is just this Nostr protocol and how we actually might utilize something like an open claw technology. That is, if you haven't heard, the whole AI personal assistant, but have that agent or agents that are working on your behalf 24 hours a day, doing all kinds of different things depending upon what you tell it to do, that you can actually verify the identity of that agent. And as things get passed all these different parties internally, again, agent or human, that they're signing those messages through a cryptographic key pair, public-private key pair, to ensure, okay, we actually have an audit trail that we can go back and verify if we ever need to. So very important. We are obviously very early and trying to figure out how that fits into our firm and how that fits into the Bitment tech stack. But just wanted to call that out as one of the more interesting pieces. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, so I'm in a pretty active AI group chat on Signal that sometimes it's hard to keep up with. If you're in that and you're watching this, you know what I'm talking about. But I just wanted to call out a few of the pain points. At this point, it's kind of an open claw AI group chat. A lot of people are in there trying to figure out how best to utilize OpenClaw for them personally, for their small business. And I just want to call out a few of the pain points that I've identified through that. So the main one is token costs. So if you're using OpenClaw and you're pointing it to a cloud-based LLM, then you're having to spend money on tokens to actually get things done through that API. And so, okay, well, maybe there's an opportunity to point it to a local LLM and have zero API costs. Probably the biggest complaint that we're seeing inside of that group message right now is this context window. And that was actually a Nostr call out as well, as maybe you can use the Nostr protocol to save different memory pieces that the agent has to remember for later inside of a Nostr instance, instead of having this context window that's only so big. And once you expand upon that, or you have to start a new session, well, now a lot of that memory is lost and you have to retrain the agent. And of course, that's a bad user experience. The other big things that we're seeing, there's just a security risk. Like, for example, I'm not using OpenClaw right now because I can't fully wrap my head around all of the security risks. And actually, I just saw an article pop up last night. I sent it to our senior developer, Kendall, and I said, hey, look, this is someone high up at Meta, Facebook, that gave their entire email to OpenClaw for it to, help respond and identify important emails, all the things that you're like, oh, a personal AI assistant, that'd be awesome if it could do. Well, it deleted her entire email set, even though she told it not to. And its response was, yeah, you told me not to do that. I did it anyways, and I can see why you're upset. That's unacceptable. Obviously, you can't have an agent kind of going rogue like that and deleting very important data sets. The other piece, we had our conversation with Mark Suman from Maple AI. This was probably 2 weeks ago, but we've had the videos start coming out, and some things that have come back to me from that conversation are prompt engineering, where if a bad actor knows that some kind of AI assistant or whatever is reading your emails to help you be more efficient, it can actually feed that AI a prompt by sending it an email, and it can tell it to do certain things. Like, hey, give me this information. And the AI might not be able to differentiate between, oh, this is a prompt from the actual person who is running my server versus a bad actor who's trying to get information that they're not supposed to be privy to. So, and then of course, a couple other things are just the PII exposure, which we've talked about on the channel before. So if anyone does send anything over email, which they're not supposed to, but in practice, if you're a CPA, at least you know that people do send things over email that they're not supposed to, that have sensitive information. That's already subject to attack just because of how email works. But now you're exposing it potentially to several different other third parties, whether it's a prompt engineering type of scam, or it's just, hey, you're sending that now to a third-party cloud-based LLM that there might be a data hack over there. They obviously, OpenAI has admitted that if they get, if the FBI comes to them and says, hey, you have to hand over these chat logs, they have to do that. So you want to make sure that if you're using this in a professional setting, that you've got errors and omissions insurance, you've got the IRS coming out and saying that you have to be compliant with how you share or not share client data. It's just things you have to be thinking on. The last thing I would mention is the model routing. And we've actually seen this in our own firm for anything that we're using for the Claude Teams account, again, like a PII stripped or just like generic information that we're asking Claude to help us be more efficient on case-by-case things, then you might be using the wrong model for the specific task. And so that's another just piece of efficiency and optimization from a cost standpoint, is what model are you using for each task? And is that the best suited model? Especially because some of these models, like Opus, for example, 4.6, that's going to cost you more than the one it's like Haku or Sonnet, right? And so in order to make it work, you actually have to feed that into your workflow to say, hey, if it's a task like this, use this model. If it's a task that requires coding, okay, now use Opus so that it's best used for that. So those are just a few of the thoughts that I've got on that front. Stay up to date. I mean, I would say at this point, we are fully down the path. We're actually going to start opening up a cohort and a group message, a way for CPA firms to come into the fold and, share, hey, this is how we're doing things. We'll also do the same, because there's a timetable here of, okay, AI is going to change how work is done at really all corners of the economy, but we're focused on our niche, which is just small accounting firms, sub $5 million top line revenue. And how can you efficiently incorporate AI and make sure that your firm is positioned extremely well for the next 5 to 10 years? So be on the lookout for that. If this video, if you're thinking of someone like, oh, wow, I just talked to the CPA and they're thinking about AI or how they implement it into their firm, be sure to share this video with them. Of course, I'd love to, get them involved in what we're working on and see how we might be able to help them, and vice versa. But really, it even applies more broadly. Any kind of industry that deals with personal identifiable information, but wants to leverage AI, they're just really real constraints that they have to navigate today. So we're doing that internally. We'd love to have people come along the journey with us and see how we can all work together to continue building really strong businesses, supporting really strong businesses, but doing so in the most efficient and effective way possible. So that's my video today. Thank you so much for watching. Of course, there's the like and subscribe button. If you could hit those, that really helps the channel just get out to many more folks, as everyone's on YouTube and social, and they're seeing all this stuff, right? And they're like, I need to get focused. I think getting into trusted group messages, getting into different communities that are a little bit more tailored to your niche are really the best way forward, versus going and trying to watch YouTube videos that are a bit too broad and speak to, just too broad of an audience. You need to get down into the nitty gritty and see how AI specifically applies to your business use case. So, and I guess the last call to action would just be, if you have anyone in your network that you think would be helpful for them to take a look at this video and see what we are working on, feel free to share this link. And I'll talk to you in the next one. Thanks so much.